After hosting my neighbor's wedding reception when their venue canceled last minute, I came home from work to find my yard torn up and a construction crew pouring concrete. "We're expanding our property line," he said. "You seem generous." I called the city inspector, and then. "My name's Daniel. I live in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from Champaign, Illinois. I moved here 7 years ago after a rough divorce. I needed somewhere low-key, somewhere I could just breathe. I work at a machine shop during the day, and I keep to myself for the most part. Mow my lawn, grill sometimes, watch the Cubs lose. The house is nothing fancy. One-story ranch, 3 bedrooms, big flat yard out back with a fire pit I built myself. There's a wooden fence that splits my yard from my neighbor's, Rick. He and his fiancée, Angela, bought the house next door 2 years ago. They were nice enough at first. You know, wave from the driveway, small talk when the trash bins were out. I never went inside their house, but we got along fine. Then one Thursday evening back in May, Rick shows up at my door, completely flustered. Said their wedding venue had caught fire 3 days before the big day. They had nowhere to hold the reception, and Angela was freaking out. They had about 60 guests flying in, and everything was already paid for. They were desperate. I wasn't expecting to be asked, but Rick said, "Dan, I know it's weird, but your backyard is perfect. We'll handle everything. We'll rent chairs and tables, get a caterer, a tent if it rains. We'll clean up. You don't need to do a thing." I didn't answer right away. I like my privacy. I don't like strangers on my property. But I remembered how isolated I felt after my divorce, how I wished someone had done something kind for me without expecting anything back. So I said yes. They brought in a crew the next morning. Setup went on for 2 days. Lights, decorations, even a little dance floor over the grass. The reception lasted from 3 p.m. to around midnight. People were drinking, laughing, music was loud but not unbearable. I stayed inside most of the time, but I peeked out once or twice. It looked like something out of a movie. At the end, they actually cleaned everything up. By Sunday, my yard was spotless. Angela brought over a basket with wine, snacks, and a handwritten thank you card. I thought, okay. That was weird, but it's done. They're grateful. No harm done. Fast forward 2 months. It's mid-July. I pull into my driveway after work, around 4:45 p.m., and I see a truck in front of my house. Not parked in a spot, just halfway on my lawn. There's a big concrete mixer in Rick's driveway. I round the corner to go check my backyard, and I stop dead in my tracks. Half my yard is dug up. The fire pit is gone. Fence panels? Torn down. There's a guy with a shovel directing a small crew. They're laying wooden frames and getting ready to pour concrete. It looked like they were building a big patio or possibly a second driveway. I stared for a full minute before Rick noticed me. He walks over like nothing's wrong, like we're about to chat about the weather. "Hey, man," he says, smiling. "So, we're expanding our property line a bit. Hope that's cool. You seemed generous before." I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. Then I finally asked, "What are you talking about?" Rick acted confused. "Well, technically the fence is a few feet off the official property line. We checked the plat. There's a little overlap. And, you know, we figured, since you helped us out with the wedding, you probably wouldn't mind." "You didn't ask me," I said. "It's just a few feet," he said. "The crew's already started. Easier to just finish it up." I walked back to my house, locked the door, and called the city inspector. I had a copy of my property survey in my safe. It was dated and signed when I bought the house. I knew exactly where my property line was. The next morning, someone from the city came out. Older guy. Wore sunglasses and didn't say much. I handed him the survey and pointed to where the new concrete was being poured. He measured, took photos, and asked me one question: "Did you give written permission?" I said no. He nodded. "Okay. This is illegal construction. He's building on your land. I thought that'd be the end of it. But Rick didn't stop. Rick wasn't outside when the inspector came. I didn't say anything to him that day. I figured I'd let the city handle it. I was angry, sure, but I wanted to stay calm. I trusted the system. That was my first mistake. 3 days later, I got a knock at the door. A different city guy this time. Younger. He had a clipboard and a weird look on his face. "I'm here to follow up on the boundary complaint," he said. "But, we've got conflicting documents." I said, "What do you mean?" He showed me a copy of a plat map, different from mine. It showed Rick's property line extended about 6 feet into my yard. He said Rick had submitted this version after the inspector left. Now I was pissed. I pulled out my survey again. It was official. Stamped. Dated. I said, "That's not possible. I've had this for 7 years." The city guy looked uncomfortable. "We'll need time to sort this out." Meanwhile, the crew kept working. Concrete went down. They framed up what looked like a fire pit, right where mine used to be. The rest of the fence was removed. Rick even planted 2 trees along the new property line. I went over that night. He answered the door with a beer in his hand, music playing inside. I said, "You gave the city fake documents." Rick didn't even blink. "I gave them alternate records. Nothing fake about it. You tore up my yard." He grinned. "Can you prove that?" "I have photos." He shrugged. "Cool. Take me to court. But by the time it's done, this'll all be finished and no one's gonna tear up concrete. Not worth the city's time." Then he closed the door in my face. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Property dispute specialist. He looked over my documents, and here's what he said: "I've seen this before. Your documents are solid. But if the city isn't stepping in, you'll need a formal injunction. That'll cost time and money. Thousands, maybe." I asked, "What happens if I lose?" "If you lose," he said, "he keeps what he took. And you might have to pay his legal fees." I couldn't sleep that night. I walked out to the edge of the concrete around 2 a.m., just stood there. My fire pit was gone. The grass I'd spent years keeping green was under a thick slab. And Rick? I could hear him laughing through the open windows. That's when I decided. If the city wouldn't stop him, I would. But not how he expected. So I stopped calling the city. I stopped arguing with Rick. I went quiet. The way I saw it, I needed time more than anything else. Time to dig. Time to watch. I spent the next week pulling every document I had. I started talking to neighbors. The couple 2 doors down had been here for over 30 years. The husband, Carl, remembered when my house was built. Said the property line was always clear. He even helped the previous owner install the original fence. I asked if he'd be willing to say that in writing. "Hell yes," he said. "Rick's been strutting around like he owns the block. I've been waiting for someone to put him in his place." That was the first break I got. The second came from a much weirder source, Facebook Marketplace. Rick had posted a listing for extra pavers and unused fence panels. I saw it while scrolling through by accident. The photos? They were of my old fence. My panels. My wood. I took screenshots. Dated. Tagged. That's when I contacted my lawyer again and told him I was ready. He filed the injunction. Rick was served the next morning, papers handed right to him while he was in his driveway, still in pajama pants. He stormed over to my house 15 minutes later. "You're really doing this," he yelled. "You gave away my property," I said. "You sold my fence." He tried to deny it, but I held up my phone. I had the screenshots open. "You think you're smart," he said. "You think the city's gonna tear down a $1,000 concrete pour just because you're pissed?" I didn't answer. I just closed the door in his face. That felt good. But the thing is, he wasn't done. A week later, I came home to find my mailbox had been smashed in. Bent post, pieces of metal all over the driveway. No witnesses. No camera footage. Then my tires got slashed. All four. Again, no witnesses. I reported both. Filed police reports. Nothing came of it. But I knew. Rick had started a war. And I was just getting warmed up. After the tire incident, I stopped parking in the driveway. I started parking at the grocery store 2 blocks down and walking home. I didn't want to give him any more chances to screw with me. The lawyer told me the injunction was moving forward, but slowly. Rick had filed a counterclaim, saying I had built my fence too far into his yard years ago. Total lie. But lies take time to untangle. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence. That's when I got another break. One night I ran into a guy named Marcos outside the gas station. He was one of the workers from the crew that poured the concrete. I asked him how long he'd been doing contract work for Rick. First time, he said. It was a weird job, man. Kept telling us to hurry. Said not to talk to you if you came by. I offered to buy him coffee. We sat in the booth at the diner, and I let him talk. He told me Rick had rushed the job. Paid in cash. No permits posted. No one called to mark the utility lines either, he said. We just guessed. Not safe. That's when something clicked. The next morning I called the utility company and asked if any digging permits or line checks had been logged at my address or Rick's for that week. Nothing. That was the final piece I needed. I sent all of it to my lawyer, the neighbor's written statement, the fake plat map, the Facebook sale post, and now, proof Rick had poured concrete without any legal clearance and possibly over buried lines. That changed everything. Within a week, the city put a stop order on Rick's patio. He was hit with a fine. The inspector came back out, and this time he was a lot less polite. Rick tried to argue, but it didn't matter. He was caught. The city gave him 2 options, tear it out himself, or they'd do it, and charge him for the labor. He chose neither. So the city stepped in. And I got to watch it happen. A backhoe rolled in one morning and ripped the concrete straight out of the ground. Clean lines, loud cracking sounds, dust flying everywhere. The 2 little trees he planted? Gone in 10 seconds. But it wasn't over. Because 2 weeks later, I found out why Rick had tried to steal my land in the first place. Angela filed for divorce. I found out from Carl, the old neighbor. He came over one morning with a cup of coffee and a smirk on his face. You see this? He said, holding up his phone. It was the county court docket, public info. Angela had filed for divorce the week after the city tore out the patio. No kids. No assets. No patience, Carl said. That's what she wrote in the filing. I didn't say much, but I'll admit, it gave me a strange feeling. Not joy. Not revenge. Just a heavy kind of silence in my chest. 2 days later, I saw Angela in the driveway, loading boxes into her car. I hadn't seen her since the wedding. She looked tired. No makeup. Hair tied back. Like she'd aged 10 years in 6 months. She saw me watching and walked over, slow. No drama. Just a look in her eyes I didn't expect. I didn't know what he was doing, she said. I swear. I thought you offered. I didn't say anything. Just nodded. She swallowed hard. He told me you were fine with the construction. That it was a thank you. I believed him. I looked at her. You didn't notice your backyard turning into mine? Her face cracked a little. I wasn't paying attention. I should have. Then she reached into her coat pocket and handed me something. A key. To the side gate. In case you ever need to go in. I won't be there anymore. She got in her car and left. No goodbye. Just gone. Later that week, I heard the shouting next door. Rick and some woman, loud, messy, something about money. A different voice every few days. Music at odd hours. The place went from quiet to chaotic. Cops showed up once, but nothing came of it. Then, just as I thought things might settle, I came home from work one night and found something new. A fresh wooden fence. Right on the old line. My line. But it wasn't built by Rick. It had a tag stapled to one of the posts, paid in full. Courtesy of Angela M. I stood there for a long time, hand resting on the top of the clean cedar. Not proud. Not angry. Just tired. About a month after the new fence went up, things got quiet next door. No more loud music, no more arguments. Rick's truck disappeared from the driveway. I figured he finally moved out or maybe lost the house. I didn't care enough to ask. But one night, in early November, I came home and saw something sitting on my porch. A plain manila envelope. No note, no name. Inside were printed photos. Of my yard. Dozens of them. Some looked like they were taken through my back window. Others from over the fence. All dated. Some from the wedding. Some from weeks after. When I was mowing the lawn or sitting on the deck with a beer. There were even a few of me asleep in a chair by the fire pit, before it was torn out. No message. No explanation. Just those photos. I looked up toward Rick's house, but the windows were dark. Empty. The next day, I went to the police. Filed a report. Showed them everything. They said they'd follow up, but I knew they wouldn't. There's no crime in someone taking pictures from their own window. No law against being watched. I still don't know if it was Rick. I never saw him again. But sometimes I wonder if that was the point. Not to steal my land. Not even to win. Just to remind me he could. I rebuilt the fire pit eventually, but I haven't used it. I still sit outside sometimes, just not at night. And I kept those photos, tucked away in a drawer I never open. Not because I want to remember what he did, but because part of me still can't believe someone could look you in the eye, smile, and then take from you like that. I used to think being kind would make people kinder. Now I'm not so sure.